Joe, when did you know, at what age in your life did you know that you wanted to get into the entertainment business, and why was that?
The very first job I ever had was I was 9 years old, and I was playing the silver tone organ for Sears Roebuck in Oshkosh over Christmas time. And I would get out of grade school, walk over to Sears and play until 9 o'clock at night on the silver tone organ. People would come. It was kind of a novelty thing. And ever since, I've been entertaining all my life, and got my start at Shakey's Pizza Parlor, playing piano and banjo back in college and high school. And so it's been a great life being an entertainer. I really enjoyed it. Other than losing my voice because of it, I still really enjoyed it. And I'm still entertaining 5 nights a week.
How did you end up working at KFIZ?
Well, I was a car dealer back then. You remember that. And I was down in Florida laying on the beach, and I got a call from Jerry St. John. Jerry says, Joe, why don't you come and sit in for Ron Harvey for a week? I said, I'm down in Florida buying cars. He says, well, yeah. And I had no ambition of getting in the radio. I thought this might be fun. So I came up for a week and sat in with Jerry. And then they asked me once again to sit in for another week. And then I did that. And then another week. And then I knew something was up. And I went over to Ron's house. And Ron had an IV hooked to his arm. And that was really sad. And I remember Ron saying, you know, it was my idea to get you in to do my show, because you always try to get somebody that's worse than you are. And I thought, well, thank you, Ron. And that was kind of a compliment, I guess. I don't know, but Ron and I were good friends. And all of a sudden he passed away. So I'm sitting in the studio and we just don't know what is going to happen after this. What are we going to do with Ron's show? And Steve Torgerson was in there. And we came up, between Steve and I, we came up with the name Backstage Live. And I said, well, what am I going to do with this? And we talked about it and we said, let's interview big name entertainment. So where are we going to get this big name entertainment? And there happened to have been a magazine called RTIR that was sitting on my desk. And in it were all the big name stars asking for interviews. I thought, well, this is a piece of cake. And I think our first interview was Joan Collins, of all people. And Jerry and I did that one. And after that, Backstage Live took off. And then KFIZ hired somebody to do the book. You know, a consultant. And they found out that Backstage Live had some pretty good numbers, so we kept it. And I changed my career. It was the least money I ever made in my life and the most fun I've ever had in my entire life. Did you know any of this, Sean? I don't know if you knew these stories or not. But
I knew some of it. I didn't know all of it, though. And most of us that have worked in radio say the same thing: the most fun, but the least pay.
Yeah, and that was all right. I was still selling cars and playing music at night. And it got to be a lot of fun.
You mentioned the Joan Collins interview. Any other big names that you had a chance to interview over the years that stand out and that you remember?
Buddy Epson was a great interview. In fact, he liked it so much he asked to be on a couple more times. So we had him on 3 times. Phyllis Diller was a lot of fun. The guy that from Beverly Hillbillies, Jethro, he was a blast. He was selling condos in Las Vegas, and I still have the tapes of the phone call that I had before he went on the air. And I remember he was loaded the night before, and he had a really bad hangover, and he did a wonderful interview. The one interview that I did was kind of a weird one that got the most response. And that was a guy wrote a book on how to make money delivering cars from one dealership to another. And I think I got over 100 phone calls for people that wanted to buy that book. They wanted to, they're retired. They want to make a little extra money driving cars from one dealership to another. So it's these oddballs. The most fun in my life was going to Las Vegas with my listeners 14 times. That was unbelievable.
How did you come up? So I knew you did Vegas. I know you did New York City a couple of times. How did that concept come up? How did you pull all that off? I mean, I don't even know that planes were commercial type airline planes were still going in and out of Whitman and Oshkosh, but there's Scheibinger with these people flying in and out of Oshkosh.
We were the very last commercial flight out of Oshkosh. It was Destination One that put this all together, Jeff Swoesdorf. We rented a 737, and I remember they had to put something like $60,000 down. And after they rented it, the Iran-Iraq war broke out. And we thought, oh no, we just lost all this money. And we still sold out that trip in 24 hours. So we had to call the government in to come and do the check-in. They had the government, whatever they call those people. And we all got on the plane, and I took the microphone from the stewardess, and we were drinking Bloody Marys all the way to Vegas, and I was giving away KFIZ merchandise. What did it do? Everybody got something. KFIZ hat or a pen or a book, and we just went nuts over the microphone and we had Sean, I wish I had a videotape of that airplane. We had one heck of a party. Then I got married in Vegas to one of the richest women in Fond du Lac, and I got divorced 5 days later, and it was all a hoax. You remember that with Claudia?
Yeah.
Oh, our listeners were mad when they found out it was a hoax. On the 5th day, I hired a comedian to be our Las Vegas attorney. And he made believe like we were getting a divorce right in Las Vegas on the 5th day. And I remember she was saying, I said, why did you divorce me? She says, it's because of the size of your portfolio. Of course, this was all a joke. I said, you can't talk about the size of a man's portfolio on the air like this. Can't do it. We got married in a little white chapel in Las Vegas. And the minister forgot that it was a radio stunt. So she was doing, and I've got tapes of this, she was doing the wedding in a hot air balloon for somebody else. So they called her and said, what's going on? You're supposed to be here. We're going to be live on the radio in 10 minutes. So she took her cell phone and called Jerry in the studio. And we were in the little white chapel. And they mixed the two together. And she did the ceremony from a hot air balloon. And in the tape, you can hear when they turn the gas on and the balloon went like that every once in a while. And then we wanted to show the people that this was fake without telling them it's fake. So our 2 wedding songs was Who's Sorry Now and Please Release Me, Let Me Go. And nobody got it. And everybody sang that in the choir and nobody got it. And man, I'm telling you, we had so much fun on the radio because I was never in radio. I didn't know what you could get away with. I didn't know what was legal. We just had fun. And there are some stories, unfortunately, I cannot tell you with the recorder on. But someday over a beer, I'll tell you some of the good ones.
What about going to New York City? I know you guys made a couple of trips to NYC as well. And I believe that was all post 9/11, right?
That was very, very sad. I remember, we used to, when we traveled a lot, I got on the radio and I said, folks, we got to do something. We're sitting here in Wisconsin. Let's see how many people we can get. And let's go to New York just to spend money. This isn't going to be there'll be a cheap flight there, but I want you guys to take a couple of grand out of your pocket. Let's help the New York people. So we took an airliner down, flew down there, thanks to Destination One. And we all, as a group, went down the road and went into all the stores and bought a lot of stuff. We all ate together And all the businessmen were coming up and going, God bless you for doing this, you know. But it was really heartbreaking seeing all those monuments, you know, all of the frames, the pictures of people and the flowers on the fences. It was heartbreaking.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, on a much, much lighter note, I think Backstage Live will always be synonymous with one of its biggest characters and controversial in his own right, UFO Bob. How the heck did you get connected with UFO Bob? And what was it like having him on the air? And what was the reaction from the listeners when Bob would come on?
Well, we made him a national star. Bob, it all started with Jeff McAndrew. We were having a meeting and Jeff McAndrew says, you know, I got this guy that keeps calling me up whenever we have a political show. And he just rails and he was obnoxious. How can we keep him off? Because we didn't have call screeners back then. You know, we just took cold calls. I said, I know how to do that. I said, I went over to the guy's house and I said, Bob, I'm going to make you a star. Here's what you do. You promise me you will never call Jeff McAndrew's show again. We're going to call you UFO Bob, and every Friday you're going to bring in the UFO Bob, the UFO report. Oh, all right, I'll do that. And the reports turned out to be really something. And we had our Star Trek theme and all that, and one bottle short of a 6-pack of St. Pauli Girl from the planet Platypus, where fermentation is king, and just all the goofy stuff that went along with it. But I'll tell you a story, and you can get this. We wanted to fix his clock really good, and our sales guy, Brownie, we put together a little skit, and UFO Bob report comes on. UFO Bob's talking, so I go over to the sound effects machine. And I bring up a helicopter, and the helicopter's flying over. And Bob says, "What is that?" I said, "I don't know. Let me look out the window." "Oh, it's a black helicopter." Oh, all right. And he goes back to talking, and then we play the helicopter sound again. And oh my God, he got really close. I turned it up, you know. Oh, and then he started getting shook. I mean, you could tell he was getting shook. Then Brownie came on. He was in the newsroom, and I patched him through. And he said, "There's a sergeant, somebody or other. We have a fix on this UFO Bob guy. Do you know his location? How can we reach him?" And talking from the helicopter. I said, "Oh boy, I don't know. And Bob was getting really shook up. And all of a sudden the helicopter flies away. I said, "Bob, the helicopter's flying over towards your place." And that was the end of the conversation. And Brownie was in the newsroom and he's laughing up a storm. And I didn't know. And then I didn't know that you're not supposed to fake a UFO. We faked a UFO once a year. And do you remember the name of the bar? There's a bar south of Fond du Lac that is synonymous with UFOs. And once a year they have UFO days. 300 people or so show up. These are all people that have been abducted into a UFO. And they have their abduction stories. We thought, well, all right. So my friend Lee, we rented a Cessna 172 out of Fond du Lac, and we flew over at 5,000 feet with a spotlight hanging from the airplane with a green gel cell on it from my band. And we had spotters on the ground, and they're going nuts. They're just going nuts. Then the gel cell blew off the light and it turned orange, and then they went berserk. These people went berserk. So we didn't think anything of it. We landed. And the next morning we got on the radio and I said, "You know, there was a UFO spotting over this bar. Does anybody have anything that they can say?" And I've got this on tape. One guy actually said, "Yeah, I'm an astrophysicist. And I calculated that UFO was going at least 7,500 miles an hour. No kidding. And I was laughing so hard, I had to shut the microphone off in the studio. I was laughing so hard. And the next I think I waited. Oh, that's the Milwaukee Journal called me up and said, Joe, this is your story. We'd like to print it about the UFO. And he was the editor. And I said, yeah, all this really happened. But I said, I got to tell you exactly how it happened. And then you can print it any way you want. And I told him the exact thing. And he said, well, we'll pass on this one. So then we get a call from that UFO television show. They want to do a TV show on UFO. Bob must have called. I said, well, okay, but here's the story, and if you want to embellish it, go ahead. They didn't do it. So about a month later, I got on the air and we told everybody what we did. And we had so many callers that were so mad. They wanted to believe it so much. They were listening to me for a month for the UFO updates on this UFO thing. And I told them how we did it, and people were really, really mad. Sean, I was fielding some god-awful emails. I don't think we could get away with that anymore, but
probably not. Those are the good old days, right?
Good old days of radio.
Final thoughts on your time at KFIZ and the station turning 100 years.
I'm going to say that I'm going to give kudos to Randy. Here's a man who took over the radio station with not much knowledge of radio. He got in the very, what was the gentleman's name that owned the station again?
Don Jones.
Don Jones. Randy got in there, he did a good job, but then all of a sudden we got hit with 9/11. We got hit with a recession. And say what you want about Randy, but I'll tell you what, anybody that was in his shoes, a lot of businesses went under. When I was standing in the studio, when the towers came down, we had Sister Claude on her 101st birthday. That was the show. We had to cancel the show. We went to CNN, remember? We went 2 weeks solid CNN. Nobody knew what was going on. We had advertisers calling by the minute, pulling their ads because they didn't know if we were under attack. Randy was under incredible pressure. He did a really nice job on 9/11, and he held the ship together. Those were some bad times.
They were challenging, but here she is, 100 years old, still on the air.
I'm so glad I did what I did. I mean, I could be selling cars or laying on the beach in Florida, but no, I decided to stay on with KFIZ until I lost my voice. I had so much fun in radio. If I would have been able to save my voice, I would have stayed. That was a precious 8 years of my life. And I look back on them all the time. And even after all these years, I can't come to Fond du Lac and sit in a restaurant while somebody coming up and saying, hey, I just listened to you on Backstage Live. Well, I've been off the air for almost 20 years. Oh, gee, I didn't know that. But it's nice for people to remember. Great times. Working with you was incredible. Working with, look at all the people that we've worked with. And everybody in radio back then was pro company. I mean, let's face it, we didn't have any loafers. We all worked hard to make KFIZ the very best radio station. And it is and it was. We had a really good time.